Hi, good morning, everybody. My name is Dr. Gaurav Misra. Welcome to the sixth edition of the Health System Fix podcast. I am a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist and health systems expert. I'm very excited to introduce our guest today, Dr. Ramesh Jain. Dr. Jain is the Emeritus Donald Bren Professor and founding director of the Institute for Future Health at UC Irvine. He's a distinguished researcher in computer vision, AI, and multimedia computing. His current work focuses on transforming healthcare through cybernetic principles and multimodal AI by creating systems for continuous, personalized health optimization. He's a fellow of the American Association of Advancement of Sciences, American Association for Artificial Intelligence, Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, Association for Computing Machinery, and many others. He has founded multiple successful technology companies and established pioneering academic research laboratories. His career bridges rigorous research and practical innovation where technology and human needs intersect. His vision for personal care utility, which we'll talk about in more in detail today, is a fundamental shift from episodic treatment to ongoing health enhancement, something I'm really interested in. He has more than 500 research papers and more than 25 patents awarded for his designs. So thank you, Dr. Jain. I truly appreciate you joining today.
My pleasure.
Great. What I've been like to do is understand our guests' area of interest and expertise through their life. If you wouldn't mind starting off, first formative years, childhood, how was that like for you?
Wow. I don't know how much details you want. I was born in India in a city called Nagpur, but I was raised in the early years in a slightly unusual setting. My father was a Jain Pandit and he used to run an ashram, which was in a remote area. So I grew up there. What that means is that I grew up in very lonely setting, surrounded by very religious environment. I did not go to school. It was until fifth grade when I was directly admitted in a school in Nagpur. I'm describing this because it has a very interesting impact on my life. Because I was growing up in a very religious and very conservative environment, I was really considered a very ideal child who followed good religious practices. But then I started getting into all kind of reading. And by the age of 14, when I was in high school, people started calling me that I'm changed. And the reason for change was because I started asking questions that people who were very religious did not like. And that's where we started going in slightly interesting direction. My parents afterwards never knew what I'm doing because I wanted to go to engineering and study science, but somehow they tolerated it. They did not like it. They tried to steer me towards religion, but they did not force anything on me. It was a very interesting when I consider that I went from reading in kerosene lamp in an ashram to questioning everything. And that became something that I still can't help from doing. That whatever we are trying to do, even for my own behavior, I keep on asking, is this the right thing I'm doing? I do not know whether this is what you wanted.
No, this is very interesting. I'm sure you know there's a concept in Sanskrit which is called Kup Manduk, which is frog in the well. A lot of times when you are in a setting where you're not exposed to a lot more, the natural instinct for people is to just think that is the only world out there. But the question and the curiosity you mentioned, which is early, impacts all of the journey ahead. So I think that's very interesting to know.
Gaurav, you said something very magical to me. The concept of Coop Manduk. I still talk a lot about that concept because I'm talking here in US. In place of using the term Coop Manduk, I use the term silos. But effectively, Coop Manduk is much better term, and I have used it in some of my blogs. Exactly the same term, Coop Manduk, because that's what is the most limiting thing. Whether we are talking about healthcare, whether we are talking about politics, whether we are talking about any societal thing.
I'd never related Koop Manduk to silos before, but actually, Koop Manduk is a more generous term than silo, because silo, I think, assigns a meaning that somebody wants to create the separation. Whereas Koop Manduk, which I agree is the more realistic term, which is that they don't even know better or they don't know different.
In fact, it's a natural term. Cook Mandug implies that we are growing organically and we remain in that environment. We have nothing better than that. Silo is artificial term. We are creating silo.
Absolutely. That makes so much sense. Absolutely. It was very helpful to hear about the first part of your childhood. Let's talk about your professional journey. And I'm really interested in the steps that was exciting, that were different, and that maybe pushed you to grow beyond the natural path.
I consider that to be very interesting thing that happened to me from childhood and now what is happening in Gen AI. Because of the background that I mentioned, I studied in Hindi medium. And as you know, once you go to the science education in India at that time, even today, it's all English medium. Going from very strict Hindi environment to English environment had a very interesting effect on me because when I was admitted to a prestigious college there, I suddenly found that every kid around me was mostly speaking in English. And professors assumed that everybody understands good English. And I did not understand anything. So the only thing I could do was to attend because I was needed to sit in the back seat and read rather than listen to what they are saying. And that gave me the habit of not attending and not taking notes because I just could not take notes. With Gen AI, now the things have changed because even after living in this country and writing so many things, my biggest problem was I could not use the articles A and D correctly. And used to work with editors to help me correct all that sentence structure. With Gen AI, I don't have to worry now. All of a sudden, I can write as well as anybody else. I then decided to join engineering college in Nagpur Regional Engineering College, which now called National Institute of Technology. Would you believe it that I did not know existence of IITs because of my environment? So I joined there, and that's where first time I heard the term IITs, and then I started trying to understand what IITs are. So I decided that after doing my bachelor's degree, I want to go to IIT and study and do PhD there. I was of the opinion that time that if I can study in India, there is no way I'm going to go outside India. And I never thought that I will leave India. But after the NIT, I went to IIT, did my PhD. I did my bachelor's degree in 69. After that, I was at IIT, joined faculty there in 72. And in 76, I was more or less pushed to go to Germany because IIT believed that you have to have international training. So they wanted me to go there. And from there, I came to US and decided not to go back. Interestingly enough, I came to US but without any education or any training in US. And so what I realized was that independent of everything, you can really do whatever you want to do. You don't have to necessarily go through formal training. It still helps me today. In US, I worked at multi-top universities. I did much of my early work at the University of Michigan. And I was the founding director of the AI lab at University of Michigan in 1987. I wrote my first paper that was internationally well known in AI, and it was published in 1977 in AI conference. I have been working in AI, computer vision, multimedia. I was at UC San Diego also. Then ran some companies, went to Georgia Tech, then came to youth. I also spent time at Stanford or National University of Singapore, of course, University of Hamburg, where I first went. So Though I started as a cook manduk in an ashram, I was lucky enough to be able to see almost all kind of environment.
What was the first time you were working on AI research that you started thinking about healthcare? And what was that reason for you to start thinking about healthcare?
That's a very interesting question because thinking aloud. If you want to consider first time working in healthcare, I was a computer vision researcher at University of Michigan, and I started with some people from medical school started working with us, but that was purely taking a CT images and trying to do 3D segmentation of different parts of those images. So that was the first exposure. Even when I was at UC San Diego, I was working with Dr. Goldbaum on analyzing retinal images. But I never considered that I was working in healthcare because it was just an application of computer vision into image processing. In place of working on fruit images or agricultural images or industrial park images, I was working on these images. As you will know, Gaurav, when you are studying in India, if you decide to go towards science and engineering, then you don't study biology. So I did not take a single course in biology in my life. So to me, biology was uh, another well, another coup thing. So I never jumped into that direction. And, and so now comes the interesting part. Until 2004, uh, and that time I was at Georgia Tech, I never thought about health or healthcare very seriously. But that time I was diagnosed with gastroesophageal cancer and I was treated right in your neighborhood. Though I was at Georgia Tech, but because I used to live in San Diego, everybody advised me, my family was still in San Diego, that I should get the treatment in San Diego because family plays a very important role in cancer treatment. So I was treated at the Green Hospital, and I became very close friends with some of my doctors there. Dr. Brunson, who later on performed surgery on me, and my oncologist, Dr. Walker, became very, very close friends with me. And because by that time I was senior enough in computer science or AI multimedia research that they knew who I was, knew about all my research. So they will come and we'll used to talk. That's when the first time I closely started thinking and observing about healthcare aspect. I am very thankful to Dr. Brunson and Dr. Walker because they were the one who suggested that I start thinking about healthcare. If you don't mind, I will tell you a story. When they wanted to start my treatment, one day they came and they said, On tomorrow we are going to start your chemo." And so I asked, "What is it going to be?" They said it's going to be cisplatin and fuse 5. I had no idea what these things are. But I casually asked, "And why are you going to give me that chemo?" They said, "This is the worldwide protocol." So I said, "Are you sure it works?" Just jokingly, because we used to joke a lot. And so Dr. Walker said, "I'm telling you, this is the worldwide protocol." I said, "Bill, you are not answering my question. How do you know it works?" So Matt Brunson immediately said, "Bill, don't try to answer that question. I will answer him tomorrow." And he brought next day lots of research papers and he gave those to me. And I had nothing better to do. I was in hospital, so I studied all those papers very carefully. So when next day they came and said, "So what do you think, Ramesh?" I said, "Well, I used to think that you guys do black magic. Now I believe that you are astrologer." The man said, "I know your opinion about astrology. Why are you putting us in that category?" I said, "No, astrologers are not bad people. Their intentions are very good. The problem is that their knowledge is not solidly based." And here you are giving me these results. 92 patients over 20 years from Dublin Hospital using 3 protocols. As you can see, data is only about 30% seats over this time. And one case, 52% people survived. In other case, 44% survived. And third case, very few survived. So the two were considered, and then 52 was winner. Matt said, "Yeah, I completely agree with you. We did not have the data, and even now, it's not easy to collect data." And I said, "But Matt, that's not the only reason. The other reason is you have been always telling me that we are all product of our genetics and lifestyle. Now, how do you compare lifestyle and genetics of a person from Ireland with a person who grew up in India? That time, when I grew up, used to be vegetarian. I never knew what alcohol is. I did not live in the similar kind of climate. Now I live in California, which is again not similar to Ireland. So, on what basis you put me in the same bucket, using our favorite term today, in the same well, said, "Okay, Ramesh, I completely buy your argument. You are a big data guy. Why don't you go and do something about it?" So I said, "Matt, if I walked alive out of this hospital, that's what I'm going to do." And he says, "Deal, I'm going to make sure that you walk alive." And that's what I started.
Amazing. It's such an interesting story. I think two things for sure also to focus on is even today, I don't think a lot of health settings emphasize the importance of having family around or engaging the family in the right way for treatment, which is something you said and which is so critical. And I think is obviously critical for cancer survival, but it's true for mental health. It's true for so many ailments. And the second piece is oftentimes our frontline physicians don't have that right information available or maybe time to analyze it specifically for that specific patient. Yeah, but it is definitely that story is really helpful because even in that period, which I'm sure was difficult and scary, I think your curious mind kept you inquisitive and going to ask new questions.
Sure, lots of people go through exactly the same thing, and we all bring our own perspective. And it was very interesting that to me it was very natural that they had to consider it, but it was not that natural to them.
I did my medical school in India, and then I did my psychiatry residency at Wayne State. I know you were there for a couple of years,
Wow,
and
yes.
I was at Wayne State, Detroit for my psychiatry residency, and then I was in DC for my child psychiatry fellowship. It's very different in India. When I was training in India, it is very, doctor says and patient follows culture. And that was different when I first moved to the US. Also in the US, it's different in different regions. I worked in some very underserved areas where it is still very reverential to the doctor and the doctor gets to decide the treatment. And whereas in other areas where it is more conversation or dialogue.
In fact, one of the things that struck me when I started getting into some of these things was how unbalanced is the relationship of a person in healthcare. Because to me, when you start analyzing this, there are three important stakeholders in healthcare. And obviously, healthcare providers, doctors, and all those things, insurance companies, and employers. Patients are ATM machines. Right? Uh, they do not understand what's going on with them because of the uh, complexity of healthcare and the jargon used. Yeah. And uh, they do not really have any ability to make any decision. And sometimes I jokingly say that whether my car is not working or whether my body is not working, the approach is same. How do I get it repaired? Yeah. And the big difference between my car repairs and my body repair is that when I take it to a mechanic, I at least get estimate and guarantee. And I don't have to pay if he cannot fix the problem. In case of medicine, that is not the case.
In fact, even if they make it worse, you still have to pay. One of the hopes I have, and we'll talk about AI more, but I've seen as we transition from calling a taxi on the phone and hoping they show up to Uber, the kind of shift of power I'm sure you remember, I remember times where you needed a taxi at 4 a.m. because you had a train or a plane flight at 6 a.m. and you called the service and then you were hoping, oh, please show up, right? There's no way to be sure. Shifting from that to Uber or Lyft and using that and the amount of power that is suddenly shifted to the consumer, I'm really hopeful that the way that AI is utilized eventually makes the power as democratized as Uber has done for transportation. The power goes to the consumer's hand.
Well, it is slowly happening and it is matter of time because health for two reasons. Number one, it's a very organized area and very nicely pointed by one of your neighbors, Eric Paul. He points out many of the challenges that we have. And that's one thing. And second thing is by nature. uh, Health is so intimate and so important to us that people would rather be conservative than liberal. And because when you start combining these two things, the progress is going to be slow. But the fact is, what you pointed out, Gaurav, let's push that one more step. The whole thing is because now we can collect data and we can use that data. We can make that data available to anybody who needs it and effortlessly, and there is no price. And the same thing is happening to health. Right now, there is reluctance, but slowly that reluctance has to go away. About 4 years ago, I became emeritus here. One of the reasons that I took retirement is because I wanted to spend all my time thinking about things related to health and how it is going to be modernized, how it is going to go, and what you use the term about consumer, that how are we going to empower patients. In fact, in healthcare, they call you patient. Now, why do they call you patient? Because you have to have a lot of patience when you are going through any problem, because you don't want to go to doctors. You take long time to decide whether it's really worth going to see a doctor. Should that be the case? But when you decide that you are going to go and see a doctor, you don't easily get an appointment. It takes long time for you to get an appointment. After the appointment, you go and you are waiting for the doctor. They are performing all the tests. You are again waiting and waiting and waiting to get all the results. And then doctor is going to look at all the data and trying to decide what's going on with you and prescribe something. Now you don't understand that. And even if you understand that, you try to reconcile with that. And finally, you have to wait whether it really is going to help you or not. So in the system, the patience is tested at every point. So at least one respect, doctors or healthcare industry have been honest to call their.
That is both funny and sad. You know, it is, I think there is one of the ways I think about it when a patient walks into the door, right? They are coming in with so much vulnerability and trust.
Yes.
And it takes a lot for many people in the underserved communities. They're walking in with a lot of trust and vulnerability. And I think it is important the healthcare honors that. I think it should not be taken for granted. And if there is a loss of trust, it is not just the patient is non-compliant, which used to be the language we used to in the past. I think it's really responsibility of the health system to make sure the trust is built or rebuilt.
Right. And hopefully in my lifetime, that will become a commonplace, that we will have to give power back to people. You use the example of Uber in every aspect of our life. That's what has happened. Uh, when I see from my days in ashram to here, at every place earlier, authority has the power. Slowly it went to the consumer. How can that be now done in some important area like healthcare and on the lighter side and in politics?
My area of interest is the health system. How does a system enable great work to be done by the front line? And I will say, in many ways, the power doesn't even lie with the doctor or the nurse you're seeing. The power lies in how the system has been constructed, which then does not enable them to their best work. I heard your talk at UCSD about a year and a half ago, where he talked about the well care and the sick care concept. And I believe that ties into the personal care utility. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Basic idea that you go to doctors only when you are sick. In preparing for talking with you yesterday, I went to my calculator. On average, a normal person, not a sick person or an old person like me, spends maximum 1 hour every year in a clinic or with a doctor. But you spend 8,759 hours outside hospital. But when you talk about healthcare system, you only talk about hospital. You talk about what a doctor does for you, what an insurance company is going to provide. Now, it's kind of mind-boggling that we talk about health as that 1 hour compared to almost 9,000 hours outside. That needs to be changed. This is a very fundamental problem. And that's why I started thinking some time ago, influenced by things that I was reading, that healthcare is really a wrong term. It is sick care. If you go to any hospital or any medical school, all the specialties are named after sicknesses. On the other hand, all of us want to be healthy to improve our quality of life. Right now, my goal is getting better health so that I can go back to tennis court, which I loved doing. Yeah. But my body doesn't allow me. I recently had my heart valve changed. So my body is not ready. So we all want to improve our health to do something. Because what we can do and what we cannot do in our life depends on what kind of health we have. Now, we all talk about professional athletes and they have to go through their training. Why can't a normal person do that? That they can think of their health, where they want to be from point A to point B. And how do they get there? In the context of fitness, if I have diabetic, I want to cure that. Being a AI and data oriented person, I started comparing. You used the example of Uber, but Uber became possible because navigation systems came into life. And I started thinking that this is really nothing but navigation system. I'm in different health states. How can I go from state A to state B? Like when I want to go visit Gaurav in Riverside, I take the address, punch it in, and I don't even worry about anything else. I just get in my car. In fact, nowadays, I don't even have to punch it in. I will just say, take me to Gaurav Misra's place. And the system will start telling me, now you turn left, now you turn right. It's much better than my wife. If I make a mistake, it will say, uh, next, make a U-turn in a very, very nice way. So, why can't we do that to health? Right? Because health is happening those 9,000 hours. All the things that are happening to me are happening during that time because I ate wrong, because I did not exercise.
I remember from my medical training, I was never really formally taught how to stay well or be well. The teaching is always around fixing sickness. We say don't smoke, exercise, eat right, sleep. Just a nuance of people telling you that you need to be near your family for better recovery, right? That's a very thoughtful intervention. That's not a concrete intervention, but it is very thoughtful. I think that is so critical in healthcare and it's hugely missing. I'm a child psychiatrist, so I work with kids a lot, kids with different illnesses in the foster systems, with autism. And I tell the parents and I tell my team, I am seeing this kid for 20 minutes, 1.5 to 2, maybe 3 months, and they are living their lives outside of my office. Their life and their environment, their school, their guardian, home environment, all of those things have so much more impact in their life than I do. This feeling of we have so much influence in healthcare. We are so important that we forget there is so much more going on outside of here.
Patients don't talk to you honestly. They are telling you what you want to hear. And that's such a big problem because you want to know exactly what they do, but they tell you what you want to hear. How do you solve this problem? The only way you solve the problem is if you use those 9,000 hours, you're collecting data. And that's important.
And let me ask you the reason why somebody would even go to a doctor. Even historically, they would go because they were in pain or they had a problem, right? So can the same person or same organization or same entity that does the crisis and does it well, maybe, right, and provides you life-saving interventions when it is in crisis, can the same entity be flexible enough to do the wellness care, or does it have to be separate?
That's a very good question. Initially, I used to think about an application like this navigation system that I mentioned, but lately I am very strongly driven by a slightly modified concept of this thing, and that concept is the following: what kind of things happen to me in my life related to health, and what do I really want to remain in good health? There are really three main areas. Number one, I need very good information related to health. There is so much misinformation and disinformation. Uh, One of the reasons for that is that we have not made this information easily available to people. My favorite example is WebMD. WebMD started in 1997. We thought that it is a really good idea. But WebMD in itself has not moved beyond last century. The way they provide you information, how can my relatives in India or somebody in Africa or Latin America get that information? You are a doctor. Beyond this, let's talk. How can we make this happen? If we make trustworthy information easily available to everybody, when they need it, where they need it, in the form that they need it, in the form that they can understand it, the game is changed completely.
I have a perspective on this from the side of the health system and a practitioner, right? We've had EHRs for decades now, and there is tons of information in there. But when I am about to see a patient of mine, none of that information is analyzed or even readily available for me to analyze and act upon. It's not actionable. So just like how you describe, like you want that reliable data to be available to the individual patient who's working or thinking about their health, there is a significant importance of making sure now with AI, there's a lot more analyzing capacity that individual humans don't have. Let's make sure we don't just collect data, which health centers are great at, but let's make them actionable. Make sure I know this patient just lost their housing and is homeless today, and I don't find out later from a social worker because the patient was too embarrassed to bring it up. So I put that into perspective when I'm doing a treatment plan.
Data is the most important thing in understanding what's going on. But really, nobody gives a damn about data. What you care is the word that you use, actionable information. How do you convert data to that actionable information? And you talked about EHR. The problem with EHR has been that they have been very closed systems. They did not even want to accept the data coming from any other source. And they hide behind the fact that doctors are already overloaded with data. I've been working in the health related areas now for about 20 years because I had cancer. I'm one of those lucky people who survived the cancer. And even 21 years after that, I'm leading a normal life. But uh, when I get a report from any of my doctors, for example, when they were going to do my heart valve replacement, I will get all these reports. Do I understand anything? The answer is no. So how do I interpret that? So what I started doing, and this is what I literally did last year when my dog was going through cancer, and this year when I had to go through myself some problem, I will take the report, feed it into one of the LLM systems. ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. And I will tell them because they immediately say that they will not advise anything because I should go to doctor. So I will say, listen, I am working with doctors. All I am trying to do is trying to understand what are the intelligent questions I can ask. And I can understand my own situation so that I can represent myself. Why can't we do this? I develop an application, I develop an environment. All the reports go there. And I'm just asking questions to my system using WhatsApp.
Later today, I'll be giving an introductory lecture to first year family medicine residents about psychiatry, how to talk to patients about. And one of the slides I have mentions that the gap in the knowledge is such that when the patient says, I am depressed, or when you ask that, are you depressed, they are not necessarily talking about the same thing.
They are talking completely different things.
Word is exactly the same. Early on, I would say, you have a panic attack, and the patient would say, no, never. And I describe a panic attack, and the same patient, oh, yeah, 3 times a week. The gap of knowledge is huge. And in health systems, we are assuming everybody understands and talking about the diagnostic criteria. I heard you talking about the personal care utility aspiration health project. Can you tell us a little bit more about that, about what you're working on?
Now you are going to ask me to discuss things that I am very excited about right now. So,
That is the goal all along.
so I mentioned these two things: getting the general information, getting the interpretation of this thing. When I am sick, how do I interact with doctors? Doctors are essential. They are going to be there, and they play an extremely important role. Many times I am asked that, do you think doctors are needed? The answer is yes. There is no substitute to that. The question is, how do we build the complete environment? The third thing that we did not talk but we referred to earlier is my navigation system. Ultimately, my lifestyle determines exactly what my body is going to be. And if I'm collecting all this data and I'm building model of the person, which can be very easily done. I'm coming to that, but I wanted to tell you a funny thing. What car do you drive?
I drive a Mercedes.
Okay, I also drive a Mercedes. Now, how much data does your Mercedes collect about the car every year? Do you know that the amount of data that your Mercedes collects about your car is several thousand times more than data is collected by any average person, including a newborn child, in the whole year? In 1 hour, they collect a lot more data about the car than you collect in 1 year about a person. So the question I ask you is your car more important or are you more important? Why don't you put your money where your mouth is? So if you really want to do this, then you have to start collecting all this data. When you are collecting all this data, what do you do with all this data? Uber. You have all these cloud services. You can go to any place and all your information is there. At one time, how much time you need to prepare to go to India or to Europe? You had to get traveler check and now just go. All their financial infrastructure is there. Okay. Uh, Everything is available to you 24/7 wherever you are, except in health. Mm, uh, Electricity is available. At one time, water was not available. In many countries, it is still not available at all. You have all these utilities. So I started thinking that you guys, you doctors, now I will become you and I. We are sitting on
Let's
different
do
sides
it.
of the
Yes.
table. So you guys, when do you provide me the best health care? You provide me the best health care when I am ready to die. If I am not dying, you ignore me. When I am dying, then you start taking me and put me in ICU. What you do in ICU? You are putting all kind of sensors. You are measuring everything. There's somebody who is monitoring me 24/7. There are doctors who can be consulted anytime. Everything is available. Now, if I can get best health care in ICU, I started jokingly saying that why don't we put people from their birth till their death in ICU? Now, this sounds like a joke that why don't we put them in ICU? The fact is, these devices and my phone, all these things are collecting as much or more data than you collect in ICU. And every day you are increasing the amount of data, the quality of data. And you can monitor using all the AI systems. Why don't we create a utility that I started calling personal care utility? In place of, why don't we create a PCU But PCU is not a location. You don't have to go in a hospital room. PCU is going with you everywhere. Wherever you are, your PCU is there. It has all your data. It's being monitored by AI systems. It has access to your doctors. It can ask your doctor that, hey, this patient is going through this problem. What do we need to do? But it will bother them only in extreme case. So now, if you think about it, we can do this. But if I start thinking about trying to build a company around this, the first question they ask me is, who is going to pay for it? Is it going to be insurance companies? Is it going to be healthcare provider? Or is it going to be an employer? Because the current model, which is a really broken model, is that only one of these three can provide this. I cannot provide that anything. And the good sense is that last few years we are seeing some people are going into it direction. I really hope that we can do much more of this. I hope that people like you and the others, we all get together and we start doing something to build these kind of services.
One of the things I'm thinking about that many people are not necessarily thinking about their health when they're feeling fine.
Right. Exactly.
Which is also, and part of it is because I think thinking about it, analyzing it has been much tougher in the past. And today, with the technology we have, it can be more continuous, more outside of your awareness, and it can be analyzed and give you feedback, which you can nudge you to change behavior. I think that maybe the general population may not be actively thinking about optimizing their health every day. Many people do, but not everybody. And maybe people think that technology is not working or will not work for them.
What you are discussing is a very, very important thing, and that is the awareness of health is not there. What you are saying is most people assume because of the way they have grown up is that health is when needed when you are sick. One of the common things that I face, including in my own home from my wife, is that she said, Ramesh, you are thinking about all these things because now you are old. When you were young, you never thought about it. Uh, one of my students who was MD PhD, a very bright fellow, he asked me, he said, Ramesh, we are talking about health navigator systems, and you can convince people who are sick about it. This system is targeted towards people who are not sick. How do we convince them? And uh, uh, it was a very good question. It took me some time, and then I asked him, tell me one thing. When you go to gym, do you see more old people there or more young people there? If we see more young people there, why are they coming to gym? But it took me some more time to realize that the real answer is not there. The real answer is you are Gaurav Misra. I'm Ramesh Jain. Suppose that we lived in the same area in India. Suppose that we are contemporaries. So I'm born in house number one. You are born in house number two. In house number three is my friend Ali. And in house number four is David. These four people, kids are born at the same day and they grow up. In the same area, most of the SDOS are the same. But when you look at them after a few years, what happens? One of them becomes a Jain, another becomes a Brahmin, another becomes a Muslim, and third one becomes a Christian. Their food habits are same. Their beliefs are exactly along those directions. Why? Because from the moment they are born, they are being educated at their home. Whatever the prevailing beliefs are, and all those things, go back to your Cook Manduk. It's happening right there. What we need to do is to start education like people do in religion. We can learn these things from religion. If we make health as important as religion, and Right now, what happens is the food that I should be eating to remain healthy is different in a Jain house and different in a Mishra house and different in Ali's house. Similarly, what medication you will be giving to me, if I add a Chinese guy also there, then it will be even more interesting. The good thing is, world is going towards globalization. If I have a trustworthy system that is used and that is available on WhatsApp, people will start using it. We will start breaking those silos.
Maybe I'm not fully educated on this, but one of the issues I'm seeing is many of the AI solutions are too generic. You know this, you lived in San Diego. If I create a product which is focused around everybody who lives in La Jolla, and then I create a product which is focused on everybody living near San Isidro or National City, those are very different populations, very different, even genetic makeup, very different social determinants of health factors. So the system, which is trained only in that one region, even there, it probably cannot serve everybody fairly. A Jain person living in Delhi versus a Jain person living in where you grew up in an ashram, their social determinants of health factors are just remarkably different, right? So you almost have to train it to such a precise level, at least local population level, I'm thinking, if not individual.
A very good challenge to face. And as an AI person, I can tell you that this is not a very, very difficult challenge for two reasons. You started answering some of the things yourself, and that was that there these SDOH systems and the training systems are there. The systems were trained in La Jolla data, and the systems that are trained on San Diego data will be giving you different results. And luckily, everybody has realized that many of the systems are trained on white Caucasians, and that's why they are not valid for other people. And people are very sensitive to that now. They are trying to sense that. But the real answer is also the following thing. You are a doctor. When you run all your experiments, you run on different populations. In medicine, there is also the concept of N of one. What is the difference between the two things? Or is one better than others? The answer is no. Both of them are required. We need population data. Ultimately, I am a human being. I am a 70 plus year old. Okay? I am of particular ethnic origin. I'm in a particular population. People talked about population, people talked about N of one. But there's another extremely important thing. And I'm currently writing about this. So in fact, I wrote a very short blog a few days ago about this. And that is levels of personalization. Which was answering exactly the question that you asked. If I have a system that is trained on general knowledge, how do I apply it to Gaurav? A big problem is most of the people have been trained to think that their privacy is very important. Now, if I come to you as a doctor, and if I say, Gaurav, I'm not going to tell you any information because it is my privacy, then Gaurav is going to say, then go to hell. I don't want to talk to you. If you are not giving me any information, how do I treat you? So there is a trade off of privacy and precision.
You're absolutely right. I think you need the population level data that helps you have this background knowledge, and then let's personalize it based on the circumstances of the N of one. And oftentimes the health system is not set up to give practitioners the time that's required.
But we don't require practitioners to spend too much time on these things. We want to help practitioners to utilize their time most efficiently. So can we take this 9,000 hours of data and create a personal model based on the amount of data that the person is willing to share? I can say that I don't want to share all my every minute data. Or I can say, hey, this disease is so important. I want to share every minute of data.
When you said that, you say that, let's make sure all the tools are allowing the practitioner to utilize their time well. Do you think the best use of their time is that relationship building with that patient, that human connection?
Two aspects. Number one is that human connection is extremely important because Ultimately, even there are stories that you hear that people feel so isolated that they are willing to pay, even when they know that somebody is trying to cheat them. They want to talk to them. Okay, so that happens all the time. You and I can tell many cases where we know that somebody is cheating us, but we still keep. So that part is very important. That human connection. When you start considering living in the real world, now we can start talking about slightly more AI perspective. That most of the knowledge that can be collected today is based on the document that can be fed to the system. The systems are not experiencing anything. The systems do not understand where this knowledge comes from. One of the most important thing is that knowledge is the result of a perspective that a person brings in. The same situation or same data is analyzed differently by people who come from different perspectives. And what could be better example of that than the current polarization in society? The same event is viewed by different people because they are coming at it from different perspectives, as extremely positive or extremely negative. Humans are going to play an important role all the time. When I will go to a particular doctor, this doctor has perspective. Yeah, we have heard many cases where somebody returned back from India and he had some health problems, and they go to a doctor here, and the doctor has never treated a case of malaria. So the doctor is looking at Google and trying to understand what's going on with the person. On the other hand, you can take a very ordinary doctor from India. Because of their experience and perspective, they will immediately tell you what goes on. It's not that one doctor is better than other, it's the experience. No,
Very early in my training in Detroit, in my first or second year of psychiatry residency, one of my patients who was at probably 14 or 15 said, you're just like a paid friend. That's what he said. And initially, as a new doctor, I was offended, but then I realized, no, that's a
it's a
compliment.
big, huge compliment. That's a huge compliment.
At least he's connecting and at least he feels supported, which is what exactly I'm trying to do.
I don't know whether you know this or not. The first conversational system that was developed was called ELIZA. And this ELIZA was developed. Are you ready for this? Possibly you were not born that time. It was developed in late 60s by Weizenbaum at MIT. And that was a system that will interact with people. People could ask questions. And after doing that, remember, it was a very primitive system uh, from today's standard. But after developing this, after getting his PhD, Weizenbaum said, I am never going to work on this. And this kind of research should be banned because people can become very intimate with machines.
Absolutely. I think it boils down to trust. In the example of somebody having suicidal thoughts, in that specific example, our system is really not set up to serve that patient in that moment of crisis well. A lot of times there's a default, let's hospitalize, let's call 911. These are not just suboptimal, really almost counterproductive measures that are taken when somebody needs the level of attention that's personal, that's supportive, and not a nuclear option of sending to the hospital. I've had patients tell me, and they've had past poor experiences in the health setting, and they said, if I say I'm suicidal, you're going to send me to the hospital, so I'm not going to say it. Or I've had patients who are actively suicidal. They go to the ER. They should be hospitalized because they're very sick, and within 6 hours, because they said, oh, I'm not suicidal anymore, they're sent home, right? And I've had that happen so many times too. So we don't necessarily have the trust in the system that when I reveal such a vulnerable piece of my information, you're going to treat it with respect and support me.
That's a very, very important issue that you are saying is the trust. The other issue is people become so desperate to talk to other people who they think is willing to listen to you. And that becomes important, that there is something or somebody who is willing to talk. And then we start thinking that they are like us, human beings. And there are movies about it. The movie Her was a very popular movie, and it was a good example of this.
I, um, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I also read your, you wrote these poems with help of AI. It was very moving. Those I'll put a link for that in the podcast when it goes out. What inspired you to write those poems?
When I was growing up, I used to write poems. Now that I am retired, I am trying to do lots of fun things also. But in addition to fun thing, one of the very important thing that I realized, which is related to our podcast, is that when I talk about health related things and about food, I talk at such a level that nobody understands it. Very few people will understand. And if they understand, they ignore it. They will remember it for some time, but then they forget about it. But there is something magical about music, about poem. Why does religion use bhajans and all the devotional songs? Because those things stay in your head and keep on resonating. So I started thinking that let me go back to it and then I can learn how do we generate some of these messages in a way that people will remember. So there were two things. And I wrote that poem because one particular poem that became interesting from technical perspective also. But I will possibly this is the same thing that you are talking about. I was very influenced by this famous poem Ekla Salore by Rabindranath Tagore. Uh, but that poem is much more at the societal level. And I thought that all of us, whether it is Gaurav or whether it is Ramesh or anybody else, we all go through this kind of insight struggles all the time, where we are pulled from our family and our friends in one direction, and we want to be going in some other direction. How do we achieve that balance? How do we do that? So I decided to work with ChatGPT, and I usually work with two, three systems together. Yeah, play with it. So I wrote something. It came out as a poem that I liked it. So I posted it on a blog. About 2 weeks later, I get a message from somebody, and who says that does he have permission to convert that to a song, which he had already done, and post it on YouTube and Spotify. Ne- So I listened to the song, I shared it with some friends, etc., and everybody loved that song more than they loved the poem. So I said, go ahead and do it. So he did it, and this person is from Australia. And then he's asked me, can I translate it to Hindi and make a Hindi song about it? And many of my, when he sent me the Hindi song, I shared with some of my relatives who do not know English. They loved that. So I started thinking that, wow, I have a message. Suppose that, just suppose that we are doing this discussion. In this discussion, there are many small parts that we may want to share with some people. But when we share this, it will be in one form. When I convert it into another form, which is the short video or short song, I can start sharing. Because if I can do that, lots of people will be more interested in those things than the original technical discussion that these two crazy Gaurav and Ramesh are having here.
Well, I'll accept the crazy because I know you are a brilliant person, and I love many of the ideas and the evolution of ideas and the reasons behind the evolution. So I'll ask you the last question. I know you're busy also. What is the most exciting project you're working on today and challenging?
That's a very interesting thing because uh, I I have freedom to work on the things that I enjoy the most. So currently, the two things that are currently occupying my thoughts is this PCU, how do I go about building this structure? Because I am sure this structure is needed. I know technically it can be done. I do not know how do I make it happen. Though have been involved in startup companies, but each startup is different. I'm not interested primarily to go and do a startup because it will make money. I'm much more interested in building it because this can change people's lives. In the process, if somebody wants to take it and make money, that's wonderful. I will work with them, I will help them. But the real motivation is, can we build such a utility so that I can also live very well as soon as I have something I get information. When I want to go today to eat at a restaurant, the system can tell me what I should be eating because I like that kind of food, because it's healthy, and because it fits with what I have been eating over the last few days. Yeah. If I can build this kind of thing, that will be wonderful. The second thing that I got excited is this adaptive expression. I started calling it adaptive expression. This is much more technical and this comes from my background. In the 1990s, I got involved in multimedia. That time, people used to have images and audio and text and numbers. And I started championing multimedia, saying that the information does not come from one. That's why we have five senses. Used to joke that time that what is more important, audio or people obviously said video. So I said, no, you are wrong because when you go in a plane during those days, then they will sell you headphones for $5. They will display the picture on a screen. So they say they are giving you free video, but audio is $5. When you take a picture today, they collect a lot of metadata about the picture. And that metadata is very useful. That's how they can transform the picture. They can tell you where the picture was taken, when was the picture taken, how I write a poem, or when I say something in a particular context. I have a particular intent behind saying that. Can we capture that? Because if we can capture that, then you can take what I am saying right now and can translate it into any language. You can translate it to video. You can translate it to augmented reality while capturing my intent.
These are such interesting topics. I think we can easily spend another a couple hours talking about this. But Dr. Jain, I really appreciate you talking with me today. These ideas, you've been thinking about them for a while it was ahead of its time. But right now, it seems like it's the right time to work on many of these ideas.
It's also right time because all the things have come together now. And in the last 2 years, what the Gen AI had shown, at one time this was not possible. But now you can listen to things in any language. You can translate those things very easily. You can generate images and all that kind of things.
Yeah. I speak Maithili at home, like from North Bihar. That's the language from there in South Nepal. My cousin was able to communicate through ChatGPT in Maithili. It did great.
So all the technology components are there. All that we need to do is that, hey, this is what we want to put together.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jain. I appreciate your time and hope to talk to you again soon.
I'm very happy to talk to you. It was fun.
Thank you.
Let's make some of these things happen. That's a fun
Absolutely.
part.
I'm excited.
Particularly with your background, psychiatry, I sometimes jokingly say that at one time it was interesting that people did not consider mental diseases even as diseases. But right now, when they do, we have to rely mostly on people's anecdotes. And we also know that people remember only what they want to remember. So how do we do that? And that's where all this data become much more important.
Absolutely. Great. Thank you so much. You have a good day, Dr. Jain.
Okay.